Here we go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Timothy Gager, and welcome to Virtual Dire Literary Series, Virtual Friday Nights. And our feature tonight is the wonderful Anna V.Q. Ross. And let me give you a brief intro. What I love about Zoom, even though, some people have mixed messages regarding Zoom, but what I love about Zoom is the ability to do bios like this so people can read along. But Anna's got a recent book coming out in November 2022, and we're going to talk a little bit about it later. It's an award winner from Red Hen Press, and she's had other previous collections, including If a Storm, Figuring, which was one of my favorite books when that came out a few years ago, and Hawk Weather. And she's a recipient of fellowships from Massachusetts Cultural Council and the Fulbright Foundation, Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, and Vermont Studio Center, where her recent work appeared in The Nation, Poetry Northwest, Southern Humanities Reviews, The Southern Review, and elsewhere. And she is the poetry editor for Salamander, which is a great literary magazine. So with that, let me turn it over to Anna V.Q. Ross.
Thanks so much, Timothy, for having me and being so careful about my middle initials and for that nice introduction. I'm happy to be here. This is actually maybe one of the first readings I've done from my book since it has officially been a book. Before, it was an unaccepted manuscript, and it was very much in process, but now it feels complete. So I'm going to just read through, I don't know, do like a tasting sample, I guess, of the book and see how that goes. Bear with me because I am not practiced at reading from this yet, but I hope I can give a sense of it. So the book is called Flutter Kick, and it has a lot of poems about heritage and motherhood and memory and also migration. I'm a first generation immigrant, so some of that comes up in the book. And the opening poem is called House. I come from there with lavender growing small against the bricks. I come from there with a little white jug and a tea towel on the tray. I come from there with a worn stair rug and a wooden banister, leading up 2 floors past bedroom doors to a room at the very top, with a window looking down to a square of grass and a garden wall where roses grow with tangled canes rooting between the cracks. I come from where I once was told someone attached a lock on her bedroom door and didn't say why or who she feared might open it. Through all the years, she stayed in the house with lavender grown small against the bricks, and the roses rooting through the wall, and the tea towel on the tray, and the little white jug and worn stair rug. She descended the day she went away. I come from there. Scrolling along. This next poem is called Almost a Mothering. Consider reduction. The 5 turkey vultures making sleek dark circles above the field this morning. They hunt by smell, I read, but hunt isn't right. Instead, they gather from the air some wind-translated sign of carcass. No punishment, nothing inflicted. The angle of their plunge, a means to rewind body to material, almost a mothering. Each afternoon, when the freight train pushes its high whine through the culvert near the field, I remember I was named for the woman in that famous Russian novel who tossed herself from the station platform as the engine pulled in. No revising that action. She was a mother too. At 12, I read it and thought her a fool. Now I see how a life buckles. A horse whose head has been yanked too often takes command how it can. The vultures land in the lichened branches of a nearby tree to claim the offal of this neighborhood. Red crowned, they preen with their hooked beaks, accepting every stain. I'm going to move to a poem about my daughter. Fear or maybe misapprehension is something that comes up a lot in this book. Misunderstanding or understanding something incorrectly at first and then having to go back and re-understand it. So this is called All Hallows. The year that she was 3, my daughter was a fox for Halloween. Orange felt hood with ears, a tail stitched to her back and painted on whiskers. The only girl in the preschool parade not dressed as a princess. That was the same year something kept finding its way through the back wall of Granny's garden to dig up moles. Mornings we'd find the excavated holes, entrances we hadn't known existed. A fox, said Mr. Lovely, who came to cut the grass. We'd need to put down poison. But would that remove the fox or just the moles, we asked, and wouldn't it be better to find the wall's gap and fill it? My daughter cried for the fox she never saw, begged us not to kill it. But still, she didn't want to go alone into the garden. I think now she was trying on fear that Halloween. Not the fox circling the hen house kind, but the unseen thing that leaves a gash, exposing mud and plunder beneath the grass you thought you knew. In the picture we took, I hold her and her baby brother on my lap. He stares at her strange ears and painted face, amazed. She bares her teeth and locks the camera in her gaze. What is the poem? Is it an apparition, a machine of memory, or the story of remembering? This one begins in summer with a girl alone in her room, changing out of her bathing suit. The damp polyester sucking down her flat girl chest, barely needing to stretch over the slight flare of hips and pelvis and thighs to slide past her calves to the floor. It continues when her cousin slams open the door. It continues when he pins her silent to the bed and pries her fingers one by one, and then each thumb from what she tries to hide, then stretches wide her arms and legs to look at all the places the bathing suit has touched. What happened next? Did a voice in the hall intervene? Was he afraid I'd remember my own and scream? The poem doesn't know why he let go, leaving the door flapping after him, useless as a single wing. And the grown-ups in the kitchen didn't ask, just kids, when I ran past and out to the yard's dry grass. But by then there was an order to things, a door the poem keeps forcing open as I twist my shoulders back into the bathing suit's straps, lifting them up and over, up and over. Checking my time here. Okay. I think I'll read 2 more. Does that sound right, Timothy? I'm going to go with yes, since I can't hear him.
Yes, yes. I had my thumbs up, but I realized I had a pen in my hand too, so it was like Bob Dole giving thumbs up.
Okay. All right. I'm going to start. Shoot. Here we go. I'm going to read one called Explaining Tampons to My Son. Mama, what are those? He asks, pointing to the small cardboard box that appears monthly on the toilet tank. So I tell him, inside, uterus, a baby could grow, doesn't. Serious-eyed, he listens. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt, I lie. We've been reading Greek myths, the gods swallowing their children or hiding them away in caves, Zeus ravishing women into cows and islands and ash. Did it hurt? Hera fuming, the other Olympians gorgeous on their thrones, trying to get one over on each other on earth. No blood, but ichor and ambrosia to smooth their battle nicks. I think of washing my sheets this morning, generations of smiling TV women in my head, calmly conquering grass stains, grease, mud, blood, that dried in and caked on. Back on the couch, he leans close, squeezing himself against me. Keep reading. We've reached Troy, a whole city, and so many favored heroes demolished over a goddess snitfit and a greedy boy. Before the Romans take over with their temples, not as beautiful, but more luxurious. What's luxurious? He asks. Expensive, I tell him. Something everyone wants. But not beautiful? He asks. Maybe not. This is confusing. Also comfortable, I say. It's the end of the story now. All the gods renamed, then given up to constellations almost obscured by light pollution and bedtime schedules. Mama, have you finished shedding your blood? He asks after brushing his teeth. Mostly, I say. He nods, burrowing down into the luxury of his bed. There are a lot of self-portraits in this book. I should say actually that last poem quoted a lot of text from the Dollier's book of Greek myths, which is a really beautifully illustrated retelling of Greek myths for children. And I think for my last poem, I want to read a self-portrait. There are a lot of self-portraits in this book, and I'm going to end with one. Let's see. Sorry to be scrolling so much. Okay, this one is called Self-Portrait as Invasive Species. In the Viking room of the National Archaeology Museum in Dublin, a glass case holds a child's leather boot, blackened but intact, with two soft flaps to wrap the ankle of a toddler. It sits between two knife sheaths in its numbered spot, 10th century AD, likely the son or daughter of a wealthy trader. The poor wore wood, discovered under High Street, Christchurch, Dublin. Nearby, a model of their mud and wattle settlement within the Palisades, sharp under the museum's LED lights. Pails, cups, spoons, and mortars, toy sword and model boat, blacksmith tools, carved rings and pendants from an amber worker's house found beneath Fishamble Street. A spindle whorl and 3 bone pins, like fingers, my daughter cried, wanting to know if there were a real skeleton in the Viking coffin boat shape by the wall. But I thought of gardens. What adopted shrub or flower would these intruders, traders who stayed long past trade, have counted on to signal spring? And then my mother, who one May day flew out from here, leaving, she thought, the crush of family, 10 siblings, a father drunk with church. No way for her to see the hull-shaped shadow of her plane cutting irreversible across Atlantic waves toward husband, house, 3 daughters foreign born, and all our toys and tools, those plastic boats and rubber boots so permanently new. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Anna. That was a wonderful reading, and congratulations on the new book.
Thanks.
So I've got some questions for you. First of all, what you read from is that that book has won the Benjamin Saltman Poetry Award through Red Hen Press. But on their website, it has the previous name Milk Teeth. So can you tell me about how it evolved from Milk Teeth to Flutter Kick?
Yes, it was something of a torturous experience, actually, torturous. So Milk Teeth was the title when I submitted it, and I really struggle with book titles. And I chose Milk Teeth because I thought it sort of had both the sweet and the sharpness of some of the content in this book, which is, a lot of it is about motherhood and also memory, and some of those experiences are wonderful and some of them have bite to them. And then when Red Hen accepted the book, they very kindly said they really loved it. They didn't have very many edits, but the one thing that they insisted upon was that I changed the title, because there were quite a few other books with similar titles out on the market, and they didn't want my book to be confused with those other ones, which makes sense, and I'm not a marketing person, so I wasn't going to argue. So then I was really struggling. It took me a good, I don't know, maybe 3 months to try and figure out an alternate title. And I'll just say that if any of you are ever in that same position, my recommendation is that you, as much as you can without annoying everyone, lean on your friends, because the book had lived with this title for so long for me that it was like, it was like getting a new haircut. Like I just could not figure out what else to call it. And I had people read it blurb, and several of them generously sort of suggested things that had popped out to them. And Flutter Kick is a line from a poem I didn't read called Geography Report, which it's a sort of a side-by-side telling of my daughter having a swimming lesson at the local Y, and hearing a report of drone strike that went terribly awry in Afghanistan and killed another little girl the same age as my daughter at the time. And and I felt like Flutter Kick had sort of similar to Milk Teeth, this similar sort of like a feeling maybe of excitement and happiness, but also there's a sharpness, there's a kick to it. And there's a comma in between, which I hope helps sort of show the two sides of the title. So that was the story of the title. And I need to shout out January Gill O'Neill, because she was the one who really came through for me in that discussion. So
also, Natalie Shapiro read the book in advance and blurbed the book for you. So I'm going to basically talk about that. There was lines such as violence and vulnerability, that an ending can come at any time, and also regret and resoluteness. Now, do you tend to think that blurbs in general are spot on, or would you, if you were to blurb your own book, would there be anything that you would edit from these?
In fact, usually presses kind of ask you to blurb your own book. You have to write up a book description, which is torturous as well. Because of course you spent so long putting together this manuscript, and by the time it's done, it feels enormous and complicated, and to try to reduce to a coherent paragraph is difficult. What really struck me in both Natalie and January's, and I didn't get a chance to send you Jeffrey Harrison, who is the judge who chose it for the prize. They all described the book as tender, which I guess I was sort of surprised by, but then really gratified, because I discuss a lot of difficult, painful things in the book. And if anybody asks me what it's about, I say it's about motherhood and memory and violence. And then I sort of say, oh, that sounds really like it. Why would you want to read that? You know? And so I was glad that they, when in their readings, saw that like I was writing about these things from that place of tenderness. So yeah, I don't think I would argue with what they saw. I was really complimented by those blurbs. And
Now,
yeah,
with such strong and vulnerable work, do you ever feel vulnerable when reading it in front of people?
yeah, really do. Yes, I do. I feel like I have to put on armor to do it. Yeah. I mean, I was really nervous for the poetry marathon yesterday because it was the first time I'd read some of these poems. So I guess maybe the more I read them, the better I get at it. But I
Isn't
always
it
feel nervous reading.
isn't it exhausting though? Like when when you finish the reading and you've kind of laid yourself out there.
Yes. Yeah. Um, it is. But then I'm always grateful for people, having been willing to sit there and listen. So I'm kind of exhausted but happy. But yeah, if I let myself think too much about it ahead of time, I can get very nervous.
So
But
do it.
I think that means that I care about the work. I think like we get nervous because we're interested and care about what we're doing. So it's kind of a good sign.
DeWitt Henry asks, will Mark Cull of Red Hen do the cover?
I don't know yet, actually. We're still in layout. So yeah, we haven't gotten to the cover. I have a few ideas. Yeah, I love what he's done before, so I'm excited for that conversation.
And Kevin McCarthy wants to know where you're from and did you grow up? He's talking about the question is a mixed senior dad wanderer. Where are you from and did you grow up there?
Sorry, where am I from?
Yeah.
I grew up in Connecticut, um, in West Hartford, Central Connecticut, in West Hartford, and that's a lot of time going to Ireland as a my mom is from Dublin, and her whole very large family is still there, and she she still, I feel like, thinks it was sort of an accident that she ended up staying here permanently. It felt, when she first came here, like it was just like something, an exciting adventure, and then suddenly she's here her whole life. So we went back to Ireland, some almost every summer, as a kid. So I felt really a part of there as much as I did part of where I grew up in Connecticut. And now I've lived in Boston actually longer than I lived in Connecticut now. So I'm in Rochester now.
Now you ran a series, which was a wonderful series called Unearthed in Dorchester at a wonderful little coffee shop. Now is your series going to come back?
Oh, I hope so. That coffee shop hasn't reopened. It closed during the pandemic, and there's been a change of ownership, but the person who bought it, this is all through the grapevine, but I gather the person who bought it is like one of the original owners, and he bought the rest of them out. And I'm hoping he wants to reopen it. He needs to find someone to help him run it. So if anybody on this call is adept at running coffee shops, it's a beautiful place. And yeah.
It is great. And like the besides having wonderful features, you have writers for the open mic, but you had great music there. I know your co-host was Raffy Sulfur. How did you get involved
Yeah.
with Raffy, the musician?
Through our kids, actually. I met Rafi's partner in prenatal yoga class. So our daughters have actually known each other like since before they were born. Yeah, he's a great guy, wonderful musician himself, and knows tons of folks in the Boston music scene because he works in a recording studio. Um, and yeah, so when I needed, actually started the series with another couple, Rose and oh shoot, I'm forgetting her partner's name. Then they moved to New York shortly after we started it. So when I was looking around for somebody else to handle the music half of it, I feel like a choice. Also, he knows how to do like the sound stuff, which I am not adept at all.
Yeah, he would switch out pianos to guitars to microphones in like 30 seconds, which I found amazing. In terms of
Yeah, he's great.
working with musicians, do you feel musicians and poets kind of meld somehow? Is it the same mindset, or do you consider that art form different in any way?
Oh no, absolutely. I think they're very, very connected. I studied music as an undergraduate, and I sang in choirs sort of for a long time. Um, and at Emerson, I teach a class with a composer called Poetry and Song, where we have our students write poems and then turn them into songs, them to music, and we talk all the time about poetic and musical meter and you know using the sounds of words to sort of suggest melody and rhythm. Yeah, poetry was originally sung, right? To the lyre, lyric poetry comes from song. So I think they're very connected.
And I couldn't help but noticing during your reading tonight, your poems are very musical. Now, is that something at this point is now coming? Does it come natural to you, or is it something that you actually think about before you put it down on paper, or as you're putting it down on paper?
Um, I I try and bring it out. I used to really distrust rhyme in my work because since I come from a musical background, I tended to sort of go for like the pretty sounds in my poems when I first started writing, and like would sort of trick myself into thinking that I'd written a strong line when really, I mean, it sounded great, but what was I actually saying? So, so I held back a lot in with sound early on, but especially in this book, um, I feel like I have more of a handle on how to use it to enhance meaning and rhythm and make the poem move in ways that I want to move and sort of highlight particular ideas and lines and images. So yeah, I paid a lot of attention to sound.
Now, you're being in Dorchester now, you're very, very strong in building that community and building that community in a literary way. So I know you grew up in various areas, and how is poetry that comes out of, I guess, an urban area differ from poetry that comes out of a rural area? Is there still a difference, or can people kind of project more?
Um, hmm, that's a good question. I guess maybe I can answer for myself. And I don't know if this is true across the board, but I feel like my first book, which of my MFA manuscript. And so I started writing it. I was actually living in New York City when I started writing it. But a lot of the imagery is actually from the West, from Montana. Which is my husband's family has a house out in Montana, and I spent a lot of time in grad school, like during the summers, went out there. And that that book sort of reaches towards landscape as a means of understanding human emotion a lot. Um, and this new book is very people. It has a lot of my neighborhood in it, and it has a lot of found language and text in it from news stories, dialogue, with my kids, but also with other people in the neighborhood. So I find that living where I live does really inform the content of the work. And I'm still very interested in the natural world, and that I still use natural imagery, of course, in my poems. Um, but my poetry now feels much more talky than it used to when I was writing in a different place. I'm not sure if that's an across the board experience. I do think though that it's, you know, if you're writing about your own experiences or about things that are important to you, your immediate environment is going to come in and affect that in some way.
So let me get this straight. So if I'm
Generally,
having a conversation with you, some of my conversation might appear in one of your poems, or if I'm talking to someone else and you're eavesdropping in the cafe, it becomes a poem.
I guess it could. That's the problem about hanging out with writers. You just never know.
All right, the last question has to do with your initials, VQ. Now, are those initials, they stand for something? Tell us a little something about that.
Yes, they stand for Veronica Quilligan. Quilligan is my mom's maiden name. Veronica is actually an aunt of mine, one of my mother's younger sisters. And I originally started publishing under Anna VQ Ross, and then I hesitated after graduate school. I thought maybe it was too fussy. You know, you get all in your head when you're trying to create yourself as a writer and artist in the world. And so I dropped them, and then I really, really regretted it because I felt like I was dropping some of my heritage, you know, out of my name, myself, and my granny, who is in that poem All Hallows, and she had a man that helped her in her old age. She came and helped her with her garden, and his name really was Mr. Lovely. And so she was a very important person in my life, my mother's mother. And she was a lover of poetry, and she was an artist, and one of her paintings is actually on the cover of my first book. So If a Storm is that. And so when she died in 2017, I just, you know, I had been feeling dissatisfied with myself for not using my initials for a while, but when she died, I really just thought, I can't do this anymore. I need to be who I am. So I added them back in. I was worried it would confuse people, but it doesn't seem to have. I don't think anyway. So
I really want to thank you for appearing here at Virtual Fridays Dyer. So the book Flutter Kick is due out the end of 2022, correct?
Yeah, November 2022.
So look for that, and while you're waiting, here's some of Anna VQ Ross's previous works. So please support your local Indian bookstore by purchasing one of these, and look for her book in just about a year and a couple of months. You know, November 2022 will be upon us before we know it. Thanks once again, and thanks people for feeding me some good questions as well.
Thanks, everyone.
And for those that are streaming on Facebook, I'm now going to say goodnight to you. I'm going to cut you guys out of here, but thanks for watching. And if you want to be more involved in the Q&A and also read the open mic, just please use the Zoom link the next time. Thanks very much.